Kelly, thanks for joining me today for the second in our series of Amazon Pay conversations about building trust in a digital first world. So thank you so much for making the time.
Sure, thanks for having me.
And happy September. Can you believe September, summer's gone? What happened to this?
No, I don't know. Every time I think about time, I'm just like, where did it go? It needs to slow down just a bit, especially summer.
Especially summer, I agree with you there. Well, the focus of our conversation isn't on getting time back, but thinking about what we've learned over the last 5 to 6 months, and merchants in particular, about the digital behaviors that consumers have either adopted new for the first time, many of them, or accelerated over the last 5 to 6 months as they were adapting and adjusting to the pandemic. So very, very anxious to get your feedback on that. So let's dig in. So your role, or one of them, I should say, is to help merchants optimize their shopping experience online. And you obviously have a ton of very rich data points to help provide some really great insights on how to actually do that. So to get us started, my question is, what are some of the behavioral shifts that you've seen, maybe unique and interesting things that perhaps we haven't heard or read or talked about before, that you've seen consumers adopt over the last 5 to 6 months that really speak to that digital shift, and maybe even to the permanence of some of those digital behaviors?
Sure. Yeah, so it's a great question. I mean, obviously, so much has changed this calendar year. It's incredible. One of the things that Amazon Pay did, actually, we just fielded this research and got the results in last month. So this is literally hot off the presses. So as we were seeing this massive shift in online shopping, we wanted to understand more about the buyers. And so we fielded a persona research study with Siegel and Gale, and we were trying to understand, like, okay, how did the nuances differ by different segments of consumers? And what we saw was a couple things. So first, digital natives, those who are already fluent in e-commerce, are obviously they're doing more online. So they're experimenting with new use cases like click and collect, or buy online, pick up in store, or curbside, delivery if it's food. And for those customers, I call them savvy shoppers, they still very much care about having a sense of safety in their online journey. Then you look at a different segment entirely, and baby boomers. And what we saw is, out of necessity, right, they are forced to trade in their in-store habits for online interactions. And this segment is really heavily reliant, and it's kind of logical, for search engines to guide their product discovery, and ratings and review sites to help guide their product decisions. And it's funny, as I was like reading this persona segmentation, I'm like, oh my God, you're describing my parents to a T. If you look at a different segment, Gen Y. So I think of this as a generation that's really known for like wanting experiences. And so without question, it showed up in the anecdotes that these are folks who are really missing, travel, but they have pivoted and are now online looking at doing things in home, especially decor. And one thing that popped in the anecdotes was they actually had replaced summer vacations with house renovation projects. So very much a shift to, maybe I'm not able to go out and experience the world, but instead I'm going to make the world around me, this contained space wherever I'm sheltering, I'm going to make it more livable and more enjoyable. And then one other data point that really shone through was that trust really transcended demographics. So it didn't matter which segment you were in, trust was a top priority amongst all these shoppers. And so I think this really creates an opportunity for merchants to think beyond data security and risk protection, and in terms of how they're defining trust with customers. And are they thinking about, how am I going to establish a relationship with my customer in a different way now that I don't have the benefit of that in-store interaction? And as a CMO for Pay, one of the things that I was really struck by, so the research firm who did our persona field study, they independently released another study and interviewed major brands to see, well, what were they hearing from consumers on what resonated right now during the crisis. And one thing that really shone through was consumers were looking for brands to connect to them in a more authentic and human way. Obviously, that's a bit challenging, right? Like you don't have the benefit of that in-store interaction and that personal connection. But how can they inject some humanity into that now digital shopping experience? And another thing that showed up was that they were looking for brands who were communicating purpose. So, what do I stand for? What's my reason for being? And, or how am I connecting to, how I'm contributing to the community? What am I doing for the environment? What am I doing for social good? Those topics, like the sense of corporate, social responsibility, was really resonating with consumers.
So Kelly, I want to back up a little bit to pick up on a couple of things that you said. I mean, I think, what's driving a lot of the digital behaviors, first time or acceleration, is this concern over safety, right? Health and safety. And so making that shift online or making more of that shift online is because consumers trust that it is a safer and better experience for them. When you talk about authentic, though, it's a word we hear used a lot. And so you yourself made the point, how do you convey authenticity when you're really not engaging with anything other than a brand or an experience online? How should retailers be thinking about authenticity that's authentic, as opposed to using the word authentic and not really delivering it?
Yeah. So, this could be my bias and my background, in content marketing, but I think, customers are really looking for, they may want to buy your product, but they really want to connect with you and your purpose. So I think storytelling plays a really important role for brands. I think about one particular customer of ours, and the way that they represent their products online, and they tell the story of the manufacturing, they tell the story of the supply chain. They're showcasing people wearing their products, and it's really it makes it much more personal and accessible. Karen, like Amazon is obviously probably well known. I'm guessing many of your viewers have heard of the leadership principles, right, that are so core to the Amazon culture. And I would guess that we're probably most known for customer obsession and how everything starts with the customer and is customer backwards. But one of the other leadership principles is earns trust, and it's actually my personal favorite. And when I talk about this internally, and I think about well, how do you earn trust with people? It really comes down to your why, your how, and your what, right? There's what you say, the actual words or the message. There's how you say it, your tone. And then there's why you say it, like what's your intent? And for a brand, I think all of this applies. And I would point to Simon Sinek and his book on Start With Why, which really talked about brands that really outperform their competitors are really able to identify a purpose and let people understand, what they stand for, why, what's their reason for existing, and just create that moment of connection. And I think in this environment, human beings are craving connection more than ever before. So I guess in terms of practical guidance, I think about how I'm weaving storytelling into my merchandising and my communications around, purchase journey, pre and post.
So I want to pick up on conversation, but I don't think it's a conversation that's strictly about words. So, in conversations that I've had with Patrick and conversations that you and I have had over the last year or so, you both talk about commerce as a conversation.
Yeah.
What does that really mean? And how should merchants operationalize that? How do you operationalize commerce as a conversation?
Sure. I think this is an awesome opportunity, right? Like, look, personally, I would say anytime you're faced with adversity, you have two ways that you can potentially respond. You can have your, oh, bleep moment and be on the back foot, Or you can ask yourself a really simple question, which is, how does this serve me? So we're all facing adversity right now. Retailers probably more than any other sector. It's a really challenging time. But I think you can flip the frame on that and say, okay, how does this serve me? There's a real opportunity here to kind of reimagine the customer journey and look at it. And I think the way that I would say it is like widen the aperture. So the analogy that I would draw, Karen, is when I spoke at Money 2020 last year, and there was a lot of attention on voice commerce. And of course, there's a natural correlation between voice commerce and conversation, right? But one thing that really mystified me was how everybody really locked in on, well, how many transactions are happening in voice commerce, and as if like the transaction volume was really the only KPI or the only measure of success. And to me as a CMO, I think that entirely misses the point. There's an opportunity right now to think about, and when I think about commerce as a conversation, it's really how are you engaging across all of those touch points in the customer journey. So use voice as an example. Are you enabling them to discover products, to do more research, to actually, yes, make the transaction, or to engage in post-purchase care or other transactions or learning or opportunity to engage, or track your product with delivery notifications is sort of the most basic and obvious. But to think about, commerce not as that point of transaction, but the entire journey, and how are you connecting with your shoppers across that? So for me right now, I think maybe born out of necessity, there's a really great opportunity to widen that aperture and look at things a little differently. And I mean, I can say more about voice, but I won't steal Chris's thunder, because I know you're going to connect with our head of product, Chris Zinwolden, in a future session. So I'll leave more of the Alexa specific stuff to him.
But it is goodness to think of it in that way, to reimagine the shopper's journey and to really adapt to that. But I'm a retailer and I'm trying to figure it out. Like, how do I figure it out? How do I actually execute against a desire to do that? How do I get that done?
Yeah, I mean, first, I think the Amazon perspective is start with customer and do your homework and understand what your customers want from that journey. We went out and did that research last summer on connected consumers. We fielded a global study, and it was specifically designed to say, help us understand, as these customers are engaging across all these various touch points, what are their expectations? What do they want? What do they need? And it really highlighted for us that how customers are moving beyond simple website shopping, how they are looking to social, to voice, to augmented reality to help them purchase, track, discover products. And I think, my first guidance is start there, do your homework on your customer and understand what their needs and wants are, and where you have that opportunity to create a moment of intersection where you can add value and solve a customer pain. Too often we start with like, we're going to do something because it's good for the business, and don't always ground it in, is it good for the customer and what customer problem are we solving? That's one of the greatest questions to kind of ground in, are we doing the right thing here or not?
Yeah, no, and I think, at least my observation is that every retailer today recognizes that pleasing the consumer and meeting the consumer where they want to be met is what they need to be doing. I think that has hit home front and center over the last 5 to 6 months. But I want to get back to trust, which is the topic of conversation du jour,
Sure.
and dig into how you convey trust, especially when the consumer is new to that merchant. So first time visitor to a merchant. The research that we've done, and we've been looking at consumers throughout the course of the pandemic to kind of understand how they're evolving their own journey as the pandemic has, risen and fallen and spiked again. 68% of first-time shoppers say that they look for visual and social cues as they size up whether or not that merchant is going to be a merchant that they feel comfortable doing business with. So if visual and social cues are important, obviously one of those things is methods of payment, right? Mm-hmm. Acceptance marks. And so my question for you is, there's Amazon Pay and there are other acceptance marks on the checkout page. what is it that you believe Amazon Pay signals to a new to the consumer merchant that other acceptance marks don't, to try to convey that sense of trust?
Sure. So I won't talk about whether others do or don't, but I do know that Amazon is one of the top 3 most trusted brands in the world. So I think the latest data to come out and validate that was from the Harris poll, which is, I think, August 2020. It's weird to say that August was already last month. So we know that there is a trust halo that comes with Amazon and therefore Amazon Pay. When we did our connected consumer study last summer, what we saw was that 48% of buyers look for a trusted payment solution like Amazon Pay, and that 43% of them, this was really a kind of a standout little nugget of data, was that 43% of them felt that that was more important than ratings or recommendations from friends and family in kind of imbuing that sense of trust and security.
But when you think about the mark, so the mark on checkout page, you know, does it convey in your mind more than just an easy way to pay? I mean, there's a lot that gets sort of wrapped around the various options for consumers to make a choice on the checkout page. I mean, what are some of the things beyond checkout, payment, easy, frictionless, that comes along with the Amazon Pay experience that you think conveys confidence and trust from the consumer's perspective and also from the retailer's perspective?
Sure, I think part of it is, it's as you said, it's not just, trust or convenience, it's trust and convenience. And I think one of the things is that, especially when you look at Amazon customers, these are digital savvy, high intent shoppers, generally very fluent in e-commerce. And what we're providing is that very familiar, trusted, safe checkout experience. It's predictable. They know what to expect. They know what they're going to get. They also know, hopefully, that their purchase is protected by our A to Z guarantee. So I think it comes from, really just the way it spans the entire purchase cycle, right? It's trusted, it's easy, it's safe, it's secure, it's convenient. And in every piece of research that we have fielded, at least in my tenure at Pay, these are the items that pop time and time again as mattering most to consumers when they're in an e-commerce situation, when they're in a shopping journey.
Yeah, and obviously, as more consumers do more of their shopping online, and a lot of consumers are being exposed to new brands. I mean, those things matter to consumers. It also means conversions for merchants. So it obviously matters a lot to merchants as well, who want to make the most of this digital shift that they're hoping to actually optimize.
Yeah, and
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, and look, I mean, there's obviously, this, there's plenty of data out there that says, as customers are expecting convenience, right? Every step or every moment of friction that you're adding reduces, the likelihood of that conversion going through. I mean, there's just so much data that backs this up. Our research with Baymard Institute showed 1 in 3 will abandon a cart if they're asked to create an account. 1 in 4 will abandon if the checkout is too complicated. 17% of people said they still don't feel safe adding their credit card details to a third-party site. So there are plenty of barriers along the way, and anything we can do to streamline that process for the consumer obviously is good for the merchant, because with every reduced step, you increase the likelihood of conversion, which obviously is what these merchants really crave and want.
Yeah, and I think merchants by and large understand it instinctively. I mean, we've been watching a portfolio of 700 or so merchants over the last 4 years and kind of benchmarking friction at checkout. And I think they recognize that there are a lot of things that can move the needle, but really creating that seamless, frictionless experience is really important. I want to go back to the digital first retail shopper, because I think some of our data is actually maybe surprising in terms of the number of consumers who have shifted digital for making retail purchases. as well as the number of consumers who say that they will stick with some or most of those shifts. So 49% of consumers have shifted digital to buy retail products. I mean, I think that's pretty
Yep.
maybe surprising, not so surprising, because consumers didn't have choice when things were locked down, but they continue to do it. We keep seeing those numbers increase. But 86% of those who've shifted say they will retain some or most, not all, some or most of those digital behaviors. So my question to you in reacting to that is, do you think merchants understand that?
Uh, look, I don't know. I think that's almost like asking to be able to predict the future, right? And I don't think any of us can do that right now. If we'd had even with a crystal ball, none of us could have predicted we'd be where we are today. So do they know? Do they understand the implications? I think maybe they're waking up to it for sure. Where it gets challenging is, when you think about building for the future, how do I anticipate what that behavior is going to look like 6 months from now, or even, let alone 3 months from now? And I think this is where I would guide, come back to the things that won't change, right? You know that, or at least Amazon has deep conviction that a customer will still want price, selection, convenience. They will still want to feel safe, secure, and in a trusted, familiar environment at checkout. And so if you can lean into the things that won't change, I think that's probably the fastest and maybe safest opportunity for retailers as they think about how to shift and adjust. We know that merchants enjoy that trust halo of security and familiarity from Amazon Pay. I think there is an opportunity as, retailers are thinking, okay, what are some very practical things that I could do? One of them I might say is work on, are you creating the right level of transparency? So even beyond checkout, right, and obviously making that as seamless and frictionless as possible. What about privacy, your privacy policy? Are you making that easy for customers to find? Do they understand how you're going to treat and collect their data? Or the protocols that you have around, okay, new customers coming back to a client or to a retailer. When I was researching for this, Karen, I went and I was speaking to our payment operations team, and they were really lamenting that retailers are in a tough position right now. On the one hand, it's eliminate friction and make it as seamless and easy as possible and reduce the number of steps. And on the other hand, wait, keep me safe, keep me secure, and I've got new or returning shoppers. And our guidance is ask for authentication, make it as simple and a relevant challenge as possible, and let customers know why you're doing it so that you are keeping their data safe. Salesforce.com released data recently that said 84% of customers would be loyal to a merchant that they felt had strong security protocols. So I think there's something to be said, not just for what you do, coming back to the earns trust about the why, the how, and the what, not just what you do, but are you transparent with your buyers about why you're doing it in order to keep them safe?
It's interesting because trust and, security and data privacy, used to be things that consumers expected, but didn't necessarily drove loyalty. I mean, they just expected that as part of the experience of interacting with the merchant. I'm interacting with you. I trust that you're going to keep my data secure and private. And we're now seeing that. I mean, like you guys, that consumers now want more visible evidence that is in fact what the bargain is with them. I do business with you. This is my expectation. And I need to make sure that you are in fact going to deliver that, which is why I think, some of these things about visual and social cues and all the signals that merchants need to think about sharing with consumers to engage and secure their trust is really, really important, especially as things move more digital.
I think one reality we are talking about when we engage in our product teams, we talk about this all the time. Customer expectations are only rising. They continue to grow. They're not getting hit. They're not lowering anytime soon. And so this recognition of, you said it earlier, they want to buy when they want, how they want, where they want, and to be able to do that safely and securely. I think about Jeff Bezos's quote about the divinely discontent consumer, right? They're always going to want more. And that's a tall order for lots of, not just Amazon, for lots of brands to think about how are you going to continue to meet those rising expectations and do it in a way that feels authentic and natural and keeps them, safe and protected.
What all these things that we've talked about today, all the things that create the kind of trust and confidence that consumers need to engage with retailers online. Do smaller retailers believe that they have an opportunity to do that? Enterprise merchants are enterprise merchants and have the tools and capabilities to deliver some of the experiences that we talked about. But what about the guys and the gals who are running their businesses? Maybe they're online for the first time, or maybe they're online more than they've ever been in order to accommodate consumer preferences. Do those merchants feel that they have a shot?
Yeah, in some ways, I think this is the great equalizer, right? So you asked earlier what patterns and shifts we'd seen since the start of the pandemic. And obviously, yes, there's been this massive move of digital shifters, new shoppers moving online, Karen. But equally, there's been this surge of smaller, mid-sized merchants who maybe didn't have an e-commerce presence or recognized they really needed to double down on e-commerce. And so we had to do quite a bit of pivots internally, pay from a marketing perspective. We lost live events as one of our major channels for demand generation and connecting with customers. We ourselves had to lean in even further to digital. And so one of the things that we recognized was we have an opportunity to connect all merchants, large and small, but with this base of digital savvy, high intent Amazon Prime shoppers. And so what we devised was a marketing campaign. We actually called it the Business Accelerator campaign. And it was entirely designed to help these merchants get online faster and get their integrations complete more quickly, but then also provide them with promotional opportunities to get exposed to Amazon customers and amplify their brands across our editorial and social channels. And happily, it's been our most successful marketing campaign literally ever. But the anecdotes that we've gotten from the merchants have been really fantastic, talking about like giving them a platform that they didn't have before, giving them exposure that they didn't have before. So in some ways, I do think that they have a shot. It's definitely changed the game, but I think that the opportunity is there for them. Yes, I do.
And I think a lot of brands now have an opportunity to go direct to consumer, perhaps never having that opportunity before, which is also very exciting. I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of consumers looking for new opportunities to engage with new merchants. And as we've talked about for the last 20 minutes or so, conveying that this is a good merchant that is trustworthy and has all the right protocols in place for that transaction is really critical to getting that business the first time and then continuing to engage that consumer going forward.
Yes.
Kelly, this was a great conversation. I mean, I think that the big takeaway is, you said it, it's trust and convenience. And I think it's convenience that consumers have redefined now in this digital first world, how they want to engage, how they want to fulfill what it is they're buying from merchants, what really means a digital experience to them. It's probably a lot different today than maybe it was back in January. But I think if consumers are in fact stick to what they continue to say that they will do, they will continue to stick with digital as at least an enabler to that experience, certainly not the entirety of their experience, but a really important enabler of it.
Yeah, I just really believe, Karen, there's just unprecedented opportunity for brands and merchants here to, kind of seize the day, right? Like rather than frame this as your the uh-oh moment, it's the what now moment and what's possible. And that's one of the areas like we've really leaned into helping merchants is on product discoverability. So not just here's all the other places you can go and extend your engagement with Amazon. So extending that choice and selection. You can do it in a safe, familiar, trusted manner, but really amplifying opportunities for these merchants so that, you know, we're helping them at a time when they desperately want and need that access to more of these shoppers that you guys are reporting, you know, are moving online and hopefully shifting and staying online as no matter what unfolds in the future.
Yep, no, that's for sure. Kelly, it was great to have the conversation. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks, Karen. Appreciate it.
And thanks for everyone who joined us today. Thank you. Stay well and be safe.